I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Yeah, hi everybody. Ron from The Truth About Addiction. Welcome. Got a very special guest today, a good mate of mine for a long, long time. This is Dougie. Dougie, you can say your surname if you want. You can do whatever you like, mate. Welcome to this podcast. We're about trying to teach people about the truth about addiction, about you're not born with horns and you don't have to come from the fucking gutter and all that bullshit that people think to become an addict, even though I did and some of us did, but not everybody has to, Well, welcome, Dougie.
Good on you, Ronnie. My name's, sounds like I'm at a 12-step meeting. Yeah, my name's Doug. And, I'm a recovering addict, and it's a pleasure to be here with the Riverside people today, especially Ronnie, he's an old mate. Yeah. And I'm at that age now where I really, I'm getting to that, the anonymity thing has always held me in good stead, but my anonymity got blown at my place of employment a couple of years ago because the companies merged. So I've been with this company for nearly 23 years, and the companies merged. Anyway, the new company decided they wanted to do police checks, and I went, "Shut up, come on, don't do police checks, please," because my record not as bad as yours, Ron, but it's pretty bad, And I thought, Christ, what's going to come of that, And anyway, in past times, when a police check's been done, I've come up smelling like a rose. I thought, I didn't worry about it because I remember my first wife, Denise, and we couldn't have children and we wanted to do some work. So we did some work for Bernardo's. And, of course, when you sign on for something like that with one of those organisations, they have to do a police check to make sure you haven't, got any pedophilia charges and things like that. And I explained to the woman at Bernardo's, I said, well, look, my records, there's no pedophilia. I said, but there is some other, serious crimes. And she went, oh, okay, well, we'll just run it through and see what happens. So anyway, it came back clean as a whistle. And I went, oh, okay. And I rang my nephew, who was a cop out at Penrith at the time. And I said, mate, what's going on? I said, I'm looking at my record now. He said, you're there, don't worry. He said, we've got you, you're there. He said, it's just on microfiche. And he said, at the time of your last offence, we didn't have the computer system, the police didn't have the computer system that they have now. So anybody previous to that date, whatever it was, everyone just stayed on microfiche and anybody after that got put on the system. Anyway, she come back with that. And then when I got the job that I'm in now, it was a government corporation. And they wanted to check me. So I said, yeah, right. On the strength of Bernardo's thing, I thought I'll be sweet. And it came back fine, no drama. But this merger, they decided to do a police check. Anyway, it came back filthy. All the court cases and everything came up, and the HR blokes rang me and he said, we've got some talking to do, haven't we? And I said, yes, we have. I said, this is historical stuff. I said, this happened, a long, long time ago in the 1980s. And he said, yeah, I can see that. And I said, well, I'll have to tell you, I am an addict. I'm a recovering addict. At that time, I'd been clean just over 30 years. And I said, well, I've been clean over. In fact, I was just about to celebrate my 30th birthday, in a 12-step program. And he said, oh, that's remarkable. He said, well, look, leave it with me and I'll get back to you. Anyway, I was shitting myself. I mean, they're going to know, what a bad person I am and everything. Anyway, 4 hours later, true to his word, he's come back and he said, yeah, we've had a discussion at a high level, and he said, on the strength of your service with the company and, given that these were historical crimes and you paid your debt to society, basically, and everyone deserves a second chance, and we'd just like you to continue on as it is. And I went, oh, okay, great, So there is a God after all, I just thought, that's pretty good, for someone who, my record isn't real good, as I say. There's robbery, there's broken into and steal, there's false pretences, larceny, use, possess, supply, heroin, supply, blah, 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 and just went on and on and on. So, I'm quite grateful that, my higher power chose to look after me in that case, you know. And talking about high powers, I mean, I'm not a religious person. I've nenever have been a religious person. The only time I was involved with religion was when I was a kid. There came a time, you know, in my addiction when I got sent to prison, and you know, I lost all faith in God and everything. You know, I lost my mother at 11 years old, and I was filthy. I was filthy on God. I thought, you know, how dare you take away my mother? And I can still remember coming home from school and saying, look, just give me 5 minutes, God. All right, just give me, well, not even 5 minutes, just give me a minute with my mother just to say goodbye. Because it was an instant thing, you know. One day she was there, next day she was gone. And pretty much I just thought, well, you know, I'm not going to whack up with my mum just for 30 seconds because I was only a kid, you know. I thought you could do that. And I just lost it from that age, you know, really. My sisters were both married and had their own lives leading. My father and me, it was like him and I against the world. And my grandfather, to a lesser degree, lived up at Wyong. And but they were alcoholics. You know, I come from a long line of alcoholics. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic gambler and a womanizer. And you know, basically, I just carried on the family tradition that. You know, I became, but I used to look at my father and I used to have these, you know, I'm never going to be like you. I'm never going to be like you. So you know, I'm never going to be like. But I went on to do things in my addiction that he wouldn't have even dreamed of. You know, I did some horrible things. It was sort of pretty much after I left school that I sort of started dabbling in drugs. And I wish I could say my first drug was really exotic and it was fantastic and everything. But my first drug was lighter fluid. It was lighter fluid sprayed onto a rag. And my mate had this place at Denali in southern Sydney, and he had this shed up down the back. I mean, we're all, you know, we're talking all, you know, 15, 14, 15 years old. He had this shed down the back and had the glow pictures of Jimi Hendrix on the posters, and he had a stereo down there, and we used to go down there and squirt and sniff up and, you know, zonk out and everything. We thought it was fantastic until one time this one young kid came down with us and we had to call the ambulance because he nearly died. You know, he had a respiratory problem. We didn't know that. We're saying, yeah, get this in here. This kid's not died. So that sort of took away. And then someone found pills, and we started taking Seconal and things like that, you know, because one of the kids' mother was on Seconal, so we used to raid the bathroom cabinet and we'd get on Seconal. Then we started to get onto, we got onto grass, we found, you know, pot, and then we found LSD. And I became a bit of a hippie, you know. I left school with nothing, you know. The last year of year 10, I think, thought now. You know, the skills certificate, I was hopeless by that time. I just lost it, you know, and you know, I can remember writing on some of the examination papers, you know, like, fuck you know, and just walking out, not even doing the exam. So subsequently, I left school with zero qualifications and ended up, you know, going up and living on a hippie commune up the back of Byron Bay for about 6 months. And a couple of my mates come up and joined me, and we just proceeded to get heavily into mushrooms and smoking pot and everything. And we came back to Sydney for a concert, for a Deep Purple concert. And there was we couldn't get any acid and we couldn't get any pot, but there was this bloke from school actually. He said, "Oh, I've got some horse." I said, what do we want a horse for? He said, "No, it's heroin, and that's a name for it." And I said, "Oh, yeah, what do you..." "Yeah, I've heard of it. I don't really know if I want to be involved with that." And he said, "Oh, you'll love it." And I said, "Yeah, right." So I had a snort at the back of this concert, and it was just a love affair. You know, I just thought, this is just fantastic, you know. And from that moment on, it was just a love affair, you know. And my heroin addiction just progressed from there on. You know, I snorted it, I smoked it, and then eventually I realised that I was using too much snorting and smoking it. So, you know, another friend, he said, "Well, you know, you can inject it." I said, "Yeah, right." So we started injecting it, and it was around that time I got a job at Drug Houses of Australia. Lo and behold, I don't know, there's big drug houses of Australia on the Princess Highway at Tempe, and I got the job there, and it was like giving rabbit the keys to the lettuce patch because I just go shopping every afternoon. I couldn't get to the S8s because they were all locked away and you had to have a special key, but I was getting Valium and Seconal and all sorts of different chemicals, and plus at that time there wasn't the luxury of disposable syringes. So I used to knock off all these Lux Rose in the package, like in the case and everything, and sell them. I was selling them for $50 or whatever I was selling them for, and I'd keep a couple. And that sort of progressed. Anyway, I got the stack eventually for not turning up for work and all the rest of it. And I must have had more stones than racehorses. I tell you, I had that many jobs back in those early days in the 70s. I worked with a lot of different jobs. And one of the jobs I had was an apprentice plumber with my brother-in-law, actually. And I went to tech out at Bankstown. And I got hooked up with the Bankstown boys. And, man, they loved their heroin out there at that time. And that led to they were involved with doing chemist busts and things like that. So I got involved with that. And we go up through the Blue Mountains and we go out west and we'd find a chemist and we'd break into it. And, back in those days, they didn't have, they didn't put their drugs so much in a safe. They just had the DD, dangerous drug cabinets, with a little padlock. So you'd break and snap it off and scoop all the good stuff up, and we'd go back and live it up. And it just became like a progression. I just got progressively more involved with using it. The crime, that sort of was my first introduction to crime, and I really wasn't that keen on doing the chemists and that, so I sort of moved away from that and just started to occupy my time with heroin. And a friend of mine had a Chinaman in Penang, and there was an opportunity there to get lots of heroin into the country. And I thought, well, yeah. And I went to my business partner and I said, look, if we can get X, I said, cut numbers, can we get X amount of dollars? And we put this guy, it'll go over there, it'll come to us, and I could sell it and we'll make a fortune. And he's he could just see the dollar signs rolling over in his head. And we did that, and it was quite successful for a little while until I used it all, and the source was sort of getting a little bit drier and drier, and then all of a sudden, one day, I wasn't there. I was out on the road, and my partner's rung me. He said, "Oh mate," he said, "there's coppers all over the place." And I said, "Well, what's going on?" He said they've come in and they've brought. I'll tell you, we used to bring it in through a newspaper, through the post. That's how we got it in. Through a broadsheet, like a Herald, like a Sydney Morning Herald, but it was the Penang News or whatever it was, and it was just rolled up and sent through the postal post. But around that time, they started scanning all the mail. Anyway, it came up, and they came out, and my partner was pretty smart. And before we took over, he had his house at the front and the business at the back in a shed. And before he lived there, bikies lived there. So he just blamed it on the bikies. He said, no. I don't know anything about this. And he was a square-head looking guy. Yeah, I don't know anything about this. He said, it's probably got something to do with the previous owners of the place. Previous tenants, they were bikies. They had the bikes down there and they could have been doing anything. So anyway, luckily for us, it sort of died away. But that was the beginning of the end for me as far as my successful using goes. Because, after that, I had to get on methadone. And I was on methadone for 2.5 years. I lost. I was engaged to be married. We were going to get married. A nice apartment down at Arncliffe. She left me, and I was in this this terrible place. I was working at Consolidated Press for Mr. Packer, printing the Woman's Weekly, trying to make ends meet, trying to get a shot a day, and just being a real desperate sort of junkie, and but still not doing serious crime. That sort of element hadn't started as yet. It was just selling heroin and trying to get by with, just scrounging around basically. And so I went to a rehab, and the rehab was good. But I ended up doing a lot of rehab. But when I went to a rehab, it was always, I wanted the back door open or ajar, because I knew that if I could just stop for a little while, I could get out and I'd be able to just use successfully. I'd be able to get a couple of bags and I'd be able to cart it up I'd be able to use this much and all that much, and it would all be great, So every time I went to rehab, I had this thing in the back of my head that I was going to be able to use successfully again. It was hopeless, It never worked like that at all. And, eventually when I left one of these rehabs, I started knocking around up the cross and Darlinghurst and met a couple of likely lads and, that knew how to do, armed robberies. And they said, well, if you want some instant cash, come with us. And I said, yeah, well, I'm in. So, I started jumping. Well, I didn't jump counters. I just poked them through counters at people. And it was just a wicked way to get money, because you go there and you just point this thing and they just fill the bag. And of course they fill the bag. It was just ridiculous. And quite often wouldn't have a firearm. I only ever had one firearm. It was a broken down 22 rifle. And Ronnie probably remembers the actual thing. It came from Cook. He probably does remember it because it was buried. And I went and dug it up. I think he buried it, Ron, and then I dug it up and started using it. And anyway, we lost that particular rifle. So I was using things in these holders. Like one, I got a shampoo bottle, and I got shoe polish and made it look like a barrel. I put a rag over it and used that. Another time I got a piece of copper pipe, so it just looked like a barrel of a gun, and I used that. And this was like desperate stuff, I was by no means, any good with rifles and guns. Well, it was no good at all, really. I just knew that I needed money for heroin, and that was a very convenient way to get it. And anyway, it was ridiculous time. Like we reigned for about 4 months, and really it had to stop, and it did stop, and I was actually up at Bondi Junction of all places, waiting for a dealer to come, and unbeknownst to me, this dealer was under surveillance, and this drug squad saw me, and they thought this bloke's waiting for this person, and of course they came across, and it was a hired car, and it had all sorts of incriminating stuff in the boot. It was a hire car that we hired and just didn't return it. That was a stolen car to start with. Anyway, they've just scooped me up, took me back to headquarters, and they've come in and they've got these photos, and they've said, "Is this you?" And I'm sitting there with one of these shirt like this, but it had Wrangler written on it. And there's me in these photos with Wrangler. I said, "Oh, no, that's just not me. That's some other bloke. It just looks like me." And they've gone, "Well, who's the little Aboriginal bloke with you?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. That's not me. I don't know who that is, And I'm trying to sort of work my way out of this and everything. And it was just a ridiculous time. And they've just found stuff, and they worked out that this place at Bondi where we were, they worked out where it was and everything. And as much as I did give myself up, I didn't give anybody else up, and ended up doing a little bit of extra time that I probably didn't need to do. It was a period of my life where I'd rather forget about, but it's there, and it's part of my story, and I have to live with it. And that was the bit that came up, with my employment. All that stuff came up, and I was thinking, it just took me right back to those times. I just thought, they're going to find out what a bad person I am, and and we are bad people. We are bad people. We're sick people. We suffer from this disease, and it is a disease. It's recognised by the World Health Organisation, so I'm led to believe that it's a disease, and it's a killer. And for some reason, I was allowed to live, and I was given a second chance. And as I say, I ended up doing a few years in the big house, and I was eventually released. And I wish I could say that from that time, that I'd learnt my lesson, and that everything was fantastic, but it wasn't. It was I could after I did near close to 6, and I thought I can hardly wait to get back on. As I was being driven to the railway station out of Bathurst, and they put me on the train, and I went straight up the cross. And mixed up with a couple of girls, and ended up in an apartment, using for the next 48 hours. I had a friend who was working in a post office, and these are just things that I'm telling you about that I had to do to support my habit. He was working in the post office, and it was around the time that bank card was being introduced into Australia. Credit cards were being introduced to Australia. So he was intercepting all these bank cards, and he was giving them to me. The male ones, I was actually going around, just going to liquor shops and buying wine and beer and spirits and everything, going to Myers and David Jones and buying all these high-end jackets and knives, sets of knives and things, all on this bank card stuff, and maxing them out, and the female ones, because I knew girls up the cross by that time, and I was getting the girls to do the female ones. And but I was stupid. I mean, what with one of those cards, at the same time I was doing break and enters and things, and eventually when I got caught for them, I got put on the Eastern Suburbs terrorist. He called me an Eastern Suburbs terrorist when the judge was sentencing me, and I used one of the stolen bank cards as ID to hawk some of the property that I'd fucking stolen. So I was dumb, I was dumb. And that's what my dad said to me when he came out and visited me. He said, "You got caught." He said, "You've done some really stupid things." And he said, "You got caught." And I said, "Well, yeah, I did." Anyway, I paid the price for that. And, jail for me was, I tell you, if I'll be honest with you, I've never laughed so much in my life. Some of the times in jail, some of the things that went on, I met some really dangerous people in jail, but also I met some really nice people. Most of the people in jail are there because of addiction. Most, and I think you'd agree with that, Ron. Most people that are in there,
100%.
addiction in one form or another. Whether it's an alcohol addiction, a gambling addiction, drug addiction, sex addiction. Addiction comes in many forms. It just doesn't have to be heroin. There's people that are addicted to all these. You can have. I've got a little bit of a work addiction these days. I'm addicted to work.
Yep.
So there's all sorts of addiction, and just because we stop using the drug of choice, whatever that is, whatever that poison is, it doesn't mean the addiction, completely goes away. It manifests in other ways, and that's the thing that I needed 12-step help with. I needed to be able to get a program that could teach me how to live life without having to resort to the bitter ends of using and stuff, because that's what I always did. Anytime, I might have, been able to stop, it was always, I didn't know how to stay stopped, and that was the problem. I didn't know how to stay stopped. So I had to learn how to stay stopped, and luckily for me, the 12-step program taught me how to. I was alone for a couple of years and met this lady that I'm with now, and it was like instant family because she had 4 kids, and at the time, the 2 girls were only 14 and 15, and their father wasn't around much, so I became more of a father to them than what their own father was. And, I became a father by marriage, so to speak. And today my wife is very sick. Unfortunately, she has rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, Graves' disease. She's got some really wicked diseases. But today, I'm the type of person that can look after her. I don't have to, I can be there for her. I can look after her. I can employ help if I need to. I can look after someone. And it's a far cry for. I remember when I first cleaned up, and someone said to me, "Oh, go and buy a goldfish, and if you haven't killed the goldfish, then go and buy a cat. And if you haven't killed the cat, then go and buy a dog. And if you haven't killed the dog, well, then you can have a relationship." As I say, my wife's pretty sick. It doesn't stop us. I mean, her mobility is not that great, but we do what we can, and we look after each other the best way we can, and that's all down to recovery. I've what's that saying? My worst day in recovery is much better than my best day of music. And that's true to a large degree. But given, that's it's a difficult one because you can look back on some of the times in active addiction, and some of them were pretty damn good. I mean, staying in the best hotels in Sydney and having sort of cash, money to burn sort of thing. There were some extraordinary times, but I didn't travel till I got clean, till I cleaned up. I only travelled in recovery. I mean, as far as travelling goes for me, I could never go out of Sydney because I was either on methadone program or I was on heroin, and I just couldn't travel. So it was quite remarkable to actually go to Southeast Asia. I went to Thailand and Cambodia and all these places where all the heroin used to come from, and I wasn't looking for heroin. I was just with my wife just wanting to have a good time, and it was fantastic. I guess probably if I'm honest, I mean the greatest gift that I've been given from recovery is the ability to love other people and to love myself.
Yep.
Because I didn't know what love was. I had no idea. I thought love was sex, and I thought, and I always thought I always had conditions on love. I'll love you if you do this, and I'll look after you if you do this for me, and it was always conditional, and it wasn't until I came to the 12-step program that I learned about unconditional love. You do things for people, and you don't necessarily have to. You can do it anonymously too, and that was a big thing to learn how to do things anonymously, not to be, doing things and shouting from the rooftops. Oh, look what I just did for everyone. Look what I just did for this person over here. And there's something to be said for doing things anonymously. For helping people anonymously. It's very rewarding from within. I don't seek, accolades from people. I don't need that, but I do need to feel good about myself these days. And the way I feel good about myself is doing things like this one. Talking with you. Going to 12-step meetings. Not that I go to 12-step meetings every night now. I used to go to them every night for a good couple of years. But I have one up in the mountains where I go to because I live at the foothills of the mountains here in Sydney, and I have a home group that I go to. But there's other things in life. There's it's such a rich, rewarding thing, and you think where can I find the time to do everything? Like today, I wanted to do a whole host of things. And I stayed up late last night with my wife watching this miniseries called Staircase. I've got us right in. We started watching it and ended up with, we watched 3 of them the other night. We ended up watching 5 in a row, 5 of these hour-long things. We ended up going to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't usually stay up that late. So subsequently, I didn't get up at 10 o'clock today, but, there was a whole lot of stuff that I wanted to do. But the main thing today was coming here and talking to the Riverside. So that was this is the highlight of the day. Yeah, it's been good to talk and chat. You know, I mean, my story is a bit all over the place. I sort of jump from place to place, but that's just how it is sometimes. I wish I could write a novel or something. Maybe I need to write a novel and just put it all down on paper as it really happened. But you know, I'm a pretty happy camper these days. You know, I live a pretty simple life. I'm fortunate to have a good job where I can, I've got a home office here, or I can, I can do my work from home. I travel around the country, so I've just been away for 3 weeks, and I was able to get someone in to look after my wife while I was away. But that's I'm on a job these days, and it's a far cry from someone who couldn't be employed, and there was a period there for well over 10 years of my life where I was just unemployed. I couldn't work. I'd try, but I'd last, a week or something, and I'd be I'd be asking the boss for a sub, can you give me an advance on my salary, please? So I'd have to go and get on to live, because it was some, my addiction, my active addiction, it was like breathing, I felt that I needed to have it, otherwise I would die, and that's how I felt, and today it's not like that. There's so many other things in my life, like family and work, as I said, but there's so much more to life these days than just using. And if anybody is listening and they think that they're not good enough, or not whatever, not too old or too young or too fat or whatever, we have these opinions of ourselves that, we think we're bad people, and as I said before, we're not bad people. We're sick people, and not until we find, a 12-step program. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 12-step program. It could be some other way that you find recovery. Recovery can come in many forms. But for me, it was a 12-step process.
Something that always comes to me, Dougie, is I met you in 1980 or 81. It was very beginning of 81. In that very small window of time, I remember you coming to the hotel room and getting tick off me so you could go and do an armed robbery and then come back and pay me.
Yeah.
And then I
always paid me bills.
Yeah, always paid your bills. So I say to everybody, no, he was always good for tick, mate. You give him tick, he'd go away and do a stick up and come and get the rest of the half an ounce and be on his merry way, and I wouldn't see you for 4 days. And you'd turn up and say, mate, can I get a shot on tick? I'll be back in an hour. I used to laugh my head off, mate. I used to laugh my head off and go, oh, fuck. And the only way you wouldn't pay me is if you got pinched. I knew that. It's so funny. And the next time we were together, we were in jail. That's when I got pinched.
Right.
And Frenchie had just been killed. Warren Lee Frenchie had just been murdered by fucking Roger Rogerson, the scumbag. And
Yep.
I remember fucking, I can't even think of the bloke's name now. Roger Rogerson grabbed him and asked him where I was because I knew he was looking for me. And then he came into the nick. I can't remember his name now. He was running around Sally Ann and he said to me, oh, Roger kidnapped me and he was torturing me trying to find out where you were. And I shit myself. That's why I went to That's why I went to a rehab the first time I went to a rehab. So I went to the rehab from the MRC that time when I was there with you. And that's when my recovery began. Yeah, 1981. It's June 1981 Frenchie got killed.
Yeah.
And that's when Abbo Henry had just been shot by the coppers. All that stuff, all happened at the same time, and it was like, fuck, yeah, man, it was like the massive stuff that goes on that just blows you away. Then I relapsed in 85 and that spaceship blew up, remember? The Apollo 13 or what it was. Yes. It's funny how we remember certain things in our life that you're like, oh, well, I'll always know where I was on that day, And the same as that 911, I remember laying in a multi-million-dollar mansion when that blew up, like in 2002 and then 2001 or 2002. 2001, yeah, 911, that's right. And then I got pinched in 2002 and went back to jail But mate, look, I've always loved you. You've always been a good mate. And you know, when I seen you come into the rooms and I seen you start to get clean, I started to see your life getting good. I was so fucking happy for you, because you know a lot of us don't get it, mate. A lot of us don't get clean. A lot of us don't find recovery.
A lot of us don't. And you mentioned Warren. I mean, you know, Ray introduced me to you and Warren. And he was with Sally at the time, and Sally set us up. Sally set us up one time with Warren because we owed Warren a bit of money, and she was living near the Clock Hotel there, around the back of the Clock Hotel, and she said, "Oh, you come round, and I'll have some beer waiting for you and that." And we must have wanted to buy something else or something. Anyway, we've got round there, of course, and there was Warren and a fellow by the name of Eric was there. And so we proceeded to have a little bit of a fight. There was Ray and me, and it was like a bit of a melee. It was ridiculous, actually, because I was swinging punches and they weren't connecting, and Eric could fight, unfortunately. And he connected and floored me. I'm on the ground. The next thing, Eric's got hold of me. He's holding me down on the ground, and Warren's got his gun to Ray's head. He's going, "You owe me this money," blah, blah, blah. But the funny thing is, like, that all happened, and you know, we were told to get on our way, and if we didn't have the money back to them, you know, we were going to get hurt badly and everything. The next day, we got credit. Credit. That's the crazy thing about active addiction. You just never, it's just mad, And
Warren actually had a good heart,
as you say, he did, and a baseball bat,
and a gun.
He loved his and a gun if he could get one. But the thing was, during that time, I got approached by Rogerson's, a couple of Rogerson's lieutenants when I was in jail, and I was on remand, and they came out and said, "Oh, we want you to get into the witness box and tell everyone what a bastard Warren was, and that's he was making you go out and do stick ups and feeding you heroin and all the rest of it." And I said, "Well, what's in it for me?" And they said, "Well, we just want you to do it." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not going to do it for nothing." I said, "What's in it for me?" I said, "I'm out here, on stick ups." I said, "Can you get me bail?" I said, "No, you're on armed robbery charges. You can't get bail." I said, "Well, what about bail to a rehab, And they said, "Look, leave it with us. We'll see what we can do." So in the meantime, I've gone back inside and spoke to a couple of people who I knew were connected with the Frenchy family and said, "Look, this is what I'm planning to do, but no way am I going to actually jump the box and say what a bad person I was." Anyway, it came to pass that they did get me bail. And I was I got bailed to a rehab, and I was on the bus going out to Campbelltown or wherever this bloody rehab was. And the bus broke down, and I thought, that's my out. I'm off. And of course, I left the bus, and they're all going, "No, you can't leave." And the supervisor guy said, "If you leave, I've got to ring the police straight away." Yeah, I thought, "I know all that." But in that time, I'd met this guy inside. John, his name was, and his nickname was Apple. And he had connections in Newcastle. He said, "If you can get to Newcastle, I can fix you up with a gun, and if you can do a job in Newcastle and get yourself up to Darwin, I know people that can get you across to Indonesia, and you can live happily after." I said, "Oh, that all sounds great. That's what we'll do then." So and of course that was the plan. And unfortunately, there was a young woman involved who was pregnant at the time. And we're actually in the same street that Warren got killed in a motel in Mar Street, Chippendale. And, anyway, I've sent her out to get some gear to bring back. And anyway, the coppers saw her, knew that she was connected to me, but pressured her and made her give me up, and ended up back inside the next day. And these guys had to hide to come back out and say, well, we did our thing. You've got to do your thing now. I said, yeah, go away. See you later. I was a hopeless criminal, right? I was never very good at being a criminal. I was never, my criminal history is shocking, but I wasn't a very good criminal. I got caught too many times. I never got away with it.
I think that's a good thing.
But yeah, I always paid me bills. Always
paid your bills, mate. That's what I always said. Dougie always paid his bills. Mate, look, it's been really lovely having you, mate. It's been a pleasure, mate. A lovely seeing your face. I really, really enjoy spending some time with you, whether it's over this Zoom or next time I'm downtown, I'll give you a call, mate. But all the best to you and your wife. I really hope that you both have some peace and some comfort and some love. And I'm so happy to see you happy. You're a good human being, Dougie.
And you are too, Rob. It's lovely to see you doing this work with the Riverside and everything. And keep up the good work.
No, brother, I love you, mate.
I solemnly swear that I will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me God.